The social learning theory. Bandura, social learning theory, 1966, says that all behaviour is learned and is nurtured through environmental things. There are others like role models, so they've observed this. For example, his Bobo doll experiment, and it is often reinforced. Aggression starts to get accepted if it is reinforced, and therefore this behaviour is repeated. Aggression has a higher chance of being repeated or reproduced if it's part of like social and cultural tendencies, and if it's accepted of the group in the group, which makes others do it as well. The criticisms are that people don't always copy what they see. Some people will reenact or repeat good behaviour they've seen, and if they see that the person's told off for the behaviour, then they won't always copy it, because they have a free will. Bandura in 1973 suggested that aggressive behaviour not in sport will have a higher chance of being done by people in contact sport. Conroy et al. 2001 findings also supported this, because he found that athletes who competed in non-contact sport believed that aggressive acts were wrong, and were wrong more than contact sports players did. And there have also been findings that hint that contact sports have a casual effect on aggression in and out of sport. This was by Bandura 1973, Zillman, Johnson and Day 1974, and Tenenbaum 1997. But some people do believe that aggression can be used correctly through sport, and it is naturally accumulated aggression that can be released. Apter 2001, Kerr 2004, and Bushman et al. 1999. The frustration aggression hypothesis. Dollard et al. 1939 says that aggression happens because of frustration arising or appearing because of something in the way of your goal or aim. This theory states that if a player becomes frustrated, then every time there will be aggression as a result of this. If the aggressive act works, like there's no punishment, or you win the tackle or something in football, then frustration will be released, cathartic release. If aggression doesn't work and there's a punishment like a yellow card or red card in football, then you'll get more frustrated, as you see with referees and other players. It's related to the interactionist approach that the environment causes aggressive personality traits by triggering them. So you'd be motivated to get a goal, like in football, to score or win for your team. If this is blocked because you're losing or your team's playing badly, it will lead to frustration, which leads to aggression, like a bad tackle. And then this will either lead to good or bad. So there'll be a drive to goal, to win, obstacle to goal, that you're losing, frustration, which will lead to aggression, like a bad tackle or good tackle, depending on whether it's successful, which will either lead to a punishment or catharsis. Some of the criticisms of this is that there's not much support for it because of insistence. That frustration every time causes aggression, when this isn't always true. It doesn't factor in individual differences in personality, and that coping strategies to deal with frustration feelings can stop this, and it doesn't factor in aggression being learnt. The aggression cue hypothesis. This builds upon the frustration aggression hypothesis, which is what Berkowitz 1969 said. Frustration doesn't always go on to aggressive behaviour, and that frustration can make you ready for aggression, so it puts you in a state where you're able and ready to be aggressive. So there will be higher arousal if you're frustrated, and aggression only occurs if an individual is ready or in a state of readiness, and it is triggered by an environmental cue. so a stimulus. So in this, it would be like you're losing, or someone made a bad tackle you, or someone said something to upset you. So in this game, the players might have been winding up the Tottenham players because they were losing, telling them they've lost the league, which could have led to a readiness for aggression. So there's an environmental cue, like one of the Chelsea players saying to the Spurs players in the Battle of the Bridge that they're going to lose the league, which means that the Spurs players more arousal. So there's an absence of aggressive cues. There's either an absence of aggressive cues or a presence of aggressive cues. If there's more aggressive cues, then there'll be a higher chance of aggression. And if there's less aggressive cues, there'll be more chance of aggression. So an aggressive cue would be other things that can make you aggressive. So like that you're losing, your rivals, stuff like that.
Why would the coaches of these two teams need to understand their players and associated aggression factors?
So they need to know what sort of aggressive cues or stimuli would cause aggressive or lead to aggressive behaviour in their players, so that they can try and limit these and reduce these. So for example, events with aggressive meaning or rivalry. So if Tottenham this game playing Chelsea, it's a big game because if they lose, Leicester win the league, and it's a rivalry of history, so the manager can just try and calm them down and tell them why it's important, but why it's important they focus and are calm. They need to know what equipment will lead to aggression, so they can remove that. So for example, in tennis, throwing the racket, they can try and like introduce punishments to stop players doing that. They'll need to know about others being aggressive because it lowers restraint. So in this game, verbal or physical abuse from the opposition players. He'll need to know about aggressive disposition, more arousal or anger, and previous encounters with this team. So, for example, there's been a lot of games over the years between these two teams that have led to bad blood, so he'll need to know about that.
How could players and coaches of these teams reduce aggression?
So players and coaches of these teams could reduce aggression players could reduce by using imagery, stuff like mental rehearsal. So they could think about how they're going to play and how they're going to stop themselves being too aggressive. Positive self-talk. So throughout the game, just keep talking. You're doing fine. Don't need to be aggressive. Count to 10 if they feel like they're going to be really aggressive and make a bad tackle, which is going to lead to a yellow card. Get away from aggressive cues. So, for example, in this game, the captain and the manager kept trying to drag the players apart to stop them being aggressive, and harsher penalties or fines. So, bans for more games or fines for more games, whether that's by the chairman, manager, or the referee, or the FA. Coaches can give the person who's very aggressive the captaincy, which means that they have more responsibility and therefore there's more weight on their shoulders if they're aggressive and get a red card or disrupt the team. They can emphasise non-aggressive role models, so always praise people who aren't too aggressive, who are always doing the right thing, to give people an example to follow. They can punish aggressive behaviours by making people sit out in training or miss the next match. For example, say one of the players in this game who made a bad tackle, he could stop them playing in the next match. The progressive relaxation technique, and reinforce positively non-aggressive behaviour. So with rewards like more game time, money incentives, stuff like that.
How could others help reduce aggression in a game like this?
So, for example, the referees can be more strict with their rules and consistent to not aggravate fans or players. And they can also say if people start moaning at them or being aggressive to the referee, just send them off straight away. The FA can bring in laws, bans, fines, hefty fines, which will disencourage players to keep doing this because they don't want to miss games or pay money. Like more policing and CCTV, which stops fans fighting, because they don't want to get put in prison, which leads to less fan aggression. Especially in this game where there'd be rivals, there's like to be fights and verbal abuse. Police and the teams for this could organise better about what time fans get there, organising special trains and like walking them in away from each other so there's not fights. And they can separate fans more, make sure there's more stewards in between the fans so there's less fights and less aggression between the fans. And the fans themselves can drink less and take less drugs, which means that they'll be more responsible and thinking about what they're doing.